take a moment to please silence your cell phones. We do have books available for purchase after the event. Just bring it on down to the first floor and we will bring you up there. Tonight, we welcome the editor and authors of What Doesn't Kill Her, Women's Stories of Resilience. Editor Kerry Garvin, a 2020 co-recipient of Harvard University's annual Thomas Small Prize, was awarded her master's from Harvard University, graduating summa cum laude with a 4.0 GPA and the Dean's Award of Achievement with a Master's of Liberal Arts in Extension Studies. Well done. What Doesn't Kill Her, Women's Stories of Resilience, is a book that can be plucked from shelves during times of adversity, lent to a mother, a sister, a daughter, or a friend. In late 2018, in the wake of the Me Too movement and the midterm elections, deemed the women's wave, two Harvard-educated women writers, Kerry Garvin and Elisabeth McKetta, dreamt of a collection of essays, a collective memoir, dedicated to the strength and resilience of women from all walks of life. They sent out a call for true stories. 60 brave women rose to the call, and the book was born. What Doesn't Kill Her, Women's Stories of Resilience, is a collection of 60 triumphant survival stories, written by a very diverse array of women. When someone is ill, many old cultures say that they have lost their story. I believe that reading the stories in What Doesn't Kill Her will help each of us trust and tell our own. That is a quote from Gloria Steinem about this book. Please join me in welcoming Kerry Garvin and the authors of What Doesn't Kill Her.
Thank you so much, Ashley, and thank you to everybody at the Coop, Nancy for putting this together and for helping us celebrate Women's History Month by selecting so many amazing books. I believe there are 7 other books that they've chosen. I'm going to go ahead and read the introduction. So in late 2018, in the wake of the Me Too movement and the United States midterm elections that saw an unprecedented number of women elected to Congress, we, 2 Harvard-educated women who write, edit, and teach creative writing, felt heartened and inspired to see so many women feeling empowered to share their stories in the public world. We began to dream of a collection of essays, a collective memoir of sorts, dedicated to the strength and resilience of women from all walks of life. A book we could pluck from our shelves during times of adversity in our own lives, or that we could lend to a mother, a sister, or a friend enduring hardship. And so we sent out our wish into the world in the form of an email to more than 50 women, inviting each one to write an essay about one of the most trying times in their lives, a time when they felt they had hit rock bottom. We asked these women not to focus on the descent to their lowest point so much as their ascent back up. We wanted to understand how they were able to grow stronger, wiser, and more resilient in the face of adversity. Not a task for the faint of heart. One after another, their stories trickled into our inboxes, but they shared more than their stories. These women shared our call to action, and more women wrote to us stating that they had a story to tell of rising from their own particular ashes. As we pored over the essays that arrived in our inboxes throughout the spring of 2019, we realized that a force even greater than courage drove these women to write, the force of empathy. Each of the women included in this collective memoir wrote with the hope that other women and men and non-binary people might find something there, some useful lesson, some wisdom to pull and carry on their own journeys forward. Each woman offered her story as inspiration, holding it high like a lantern to guide others through darkness. With the sparks created by increased dialogue about the importance of inclusivity and intersectional feminism, it seemed right that so many women would feel empowered at this point in history to come forward and share experiences that have marked their lives. lives. We exist in an especially poignant moment worldwide, in which we all must summon strength to determine what the coming world will look like, not only for women, but for everyone. Now, in 2022, the book is finally complete, and the world has changed yet again. Nearly 2 years after our original call for essays went out, the need for not only dialogue, but the act of listening and truly hearing others, particularly Black people and people of color, has gained much needed significance, as well as life and death stakes. The global COVID-19 pandemic highlighted wide disparities in healthcare by disproportionately affecting Black people and people of color. Furthermore, the tragic murders of unarmed Black men and women in the first half of 2020, from Ahmaud Arbery to Breonna Taylor to George Floyd, have brought to national prominence a long overdue discussion on the enduring racism in policing and our justice system. With Black Lives Matter fighting to change where power lies, and in the wake of the turbulent 2020 presidential election, amid dire predictions about the future of the earth we inhabit, it seems that all of life hinges upon the strength and collaboration of all women to lead the charge in healing the world's wounds. Resilience, how and why we must summon it, is crucial to the conversations that all of us must have in this day and age. Within this collective memoir are 60 triumphant stories by a diverse array of women. Sometimes triumph is a soaring achievement in the face of adversity. At other times, it's getting out of bed and putting one foot in front of the other. Phoenixes arise from ashes of all sorts, even bed sheets. Each essay ends, as most memoirs end, with some form of either courage or acceptance. The courage to change one's situation, or the willingness to accept one's own life, whatever its lopsided, happily ever after might hold. These stories vary greatly, and what is hard for one woman might feel second nature to another. Some stories are straightforward, some dramatic, some subtle, some poetic. Each woman views her survival differently. As one writer in this book describes it, there is a distinction between being broken by adversity and becoming a rich mosaic, colorful and storied. To be a woman at any point in history is an experiment in survival. Women experience constant adversity due to institutionalized misogyny, widespread sexism, and rampant inequality. For Black women and women of color, the adversity has been, and still very much is, compounded exponentially. But women are innate survivors, both in myth and in life. Penelope was patient. Persephone learned to live underground. Medea killed one litter of children when she learned that her home would not be a secure place for them. Women carried children and stories, culture and community. It is the work of women throughout history to do the ordinary daily work to ensure the existence of our species. It is no wonder then that survival is built into women. Women persist, not broken or unbroken, but as mosaics with enduring lives and stories to piece together and pass on to others. Many of the essays feature culturally relevant topics, such as advocating for healthcare as a woman, surviving sexual assault, reconciling female genital mutilation with a mother who made the decision to cut her baby girl, battling body dysmorphia, working in the sex industry, overcoming breast cancer, motherhood after miscarriage, losing a husband on a battlefield in Afghanistan, and transitioning from male to female. These stories do not espouse political or religious leanings, but aspire to show on a broad scale the experience of being a woman in the 21st century. Some of the women included in What Doesn't Kill Her are professional writers and academics. Most, however, are not. Women's stories deserve to be heard at an equal volume and with equal dignity, regardless of socioeconomic standing, academic background, race, religion, or sexual orientation. The book features a diverse group of voices ranging in racial and cultural backgrounds. As editors, we chose to be light-handed, preserving each woman's voice and story so that it felt truthful to the writer. In closing, we wish to extend our heartfelt gratitude to all of the intrepid writers who contributed to this collection. We hope that your experience as a writer has been as profoundly transformative and cathartic for you as it has been for us as editors. You exemplify what this project set out to accomplish, telling stories that show not only the ways women experience adversity, but the ways women summon strength and rise, lifting others as we take flight. And now I would like to pass the mic to Miss Bethanie MacDonald. Bethanie likes to read, but relies heavily on spell check when she writes. She takes way too many photos of her dogs that she does nothing with. She loves to travel with her family and actually loves them and likes her life. That's pretty good. Her biggest goal is to parent without screwing up. She is happily employed by the Green Beret Foundation to work with veterans and family members. And Bethanie will be reading her essay. I think it's a take on resilience, like 1,400,000. Yeah.
Very eloquent title.
Yes, very eloquent title. Let me get that to this page. Thank you.
I just found it.
There's a lot of M's in here. Okay. Bethanie MacDonald.
It's a popular one.
Essay on resilience, take 38,000, not a million, 38,474. See, women have each other's back. Thank you.
I'll trip on the wire. And I'll drop the tissues. I'm here to set the standard low so everybody else can just bring it up so they're all finished. No!
No, we are all.
Oh, I am. I'm very confident in some things. Failure. You'll all be crying in a minute. I gotta. I'm sitting on my back porch, wondering how I got here. A bucolic garden with ivy-laden paths leading to woods behind my old white Cape Cod in the sandhills of North Carolina. Cardinals flying between the camellia bushes that bloom with bright pink and red flowers in winter. I'm happier than I've ever been, though I haven't always been here. 7 years ago, I lived in noisy Fayetteville, North Carolina. It's where Greg and I worked while stationed at Fort Bragg, home of the Special Operations Command. He was a soldier in the 3rd Special Forces Group. I was a Department of Defense civilian worker for a unit nearby. We had a daughter, Gwen, a few dogs, and a daily routine. Our days were busy, loud, crammed with tasks, crisis, war, and homework. It was mundane but satisfying. We were making a difference in people's lives, not in a conventional way. We specialized in unconventional warfare and resources for their families. Greg knew that his chances of surviving weren't the best. I knew it too. How could I not? He deployed 7 times over 9 years. It would be ignorant and irresponsible not to acknowledge and prepare for his death. Every time he left for deployment, we planned his funeral, arranged all the necessary paperwork, updated our wills, living wills, powers of attorney, and then hoped for the best. But hope is a dangerous thing. In the summer of 2012, Greg's luck ran out in the Helmand province of Afghanistan. There, in the arid desert, he was shot in the head on a dismounted patrol. A medic at his side intubated him on the battlefield, keeping him alive in a coma from which he would never recover. He survived for over a week, actively dying, eventually being transferred to Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland. It was a humid morning at 0200 when I met the ambulance carrying my husband home from the battlefield. Men standing around me told me I'd not want to see him in the condition he was in. I looked at them strangely. How could I not be there to hold my husband's hand as he was taken off the ambulance, bringing him home one last time? When Greg was alive, he could barely handle having a cold. Now, as he lay dying, how could I not be there? How did I manage all of those years of war unsupervised, with a career, a family, pets, and plants that I didn't kill, and a mortgage that I kept paid on time. I almost wanted to check the date on my watch and make sure it wasn't 1812. I always had heroes growing up. My childhood playroom was littered with dolls and the images of Wonder Woman, Amelia Earhart, and Clara Barton. Women who were brave in the face of fear and adversity. As I grew up, my playroom became an office, and my heroes became women like the legendary Molly Pitcher, or the wives of Sparta. Women who faced death and bravely moved forward, heads held high, to rebuild their lives and countries. I had long kept an excerpt from Stephen Pressfield's The Warrior Ethos in my desk at work. It detailed aspects of the Battle of Thermopylae. Spartans were raised to be warriors. They were expected to be brave. More than that, the king carefully chose specific warriors for the strength of their wives and mothers to bear up under their loss. He knew they weren't coming back from battle. These women would rebuild Sparta. I kept that excerpt. I held on to it as if these women were real and he knew them. Greg was an organ donor. While I was prepared for everything else, I wasn't prepared to choose his extubation date. Choosing the date that your husband is going to die bears great sorrow, responsibility, and so much doubt. How do you know you're doing the right thing? What if he wakes up? What if he could actually survive? What if he could actually recover? You can never be prepared for all the feelings and questions that swell in your head when you bear the burden of making that call. But I didn't make that decision. I didn't decide to pull the plug. Greg did. I had to oversee his living well. I had to do the thing he asked me to do, the horrible thing he trusted me to do. I wasn't prepared to be so angry with him for asking me to repeat the words, remove all life-sustaining efforts, or asking me to watch him die. But having been married for 12 years, I figured I'd been mad at him for much less. So this was at least a very good reason to be mad at him. For the week that Greg survived, I had to wake up every day and do something I didn't want to do. I trudged through every day, trying to make it from beginning to end, praying for something that would never happen. I depended on the comforts of science. Science is pretty definitive. Faith is sketchy. You have to lean forward in faith and hope in the end it all worked out. Doctors ran tests that showed us that Greg was brain dead. He was having strokes, his organs would fail soon, and he had 2 heart attacks. He was not going to survive this catastrophic injury to his brain. To abide Greg's living well and to do the right thing, it gave me comfort. But still, letting go of hope and loving Greg enough to let go was the most desperate leap of faith I ever took. Every story you hear on the news of some miraculous recovery is the story you want to be your own, like winning the lottery. For every day and every choice I made during that week, I prayed there would be a different outcome. But there wasn't a different outcome. That is not how God works. Greg took his final breath in my hands in the early morning hours of August 8th, 2012. He wanted it that way. I didn't. I didn't realize it until I had to watch him die, silently screaming in my head in a room full of people. I had no control. I couldn't change the outcome. Death isn't romantic like it is on TV. It is horrific. It's desperate. My insides felt like a raging explosion. Outwardly, I felt like I had to appear dignified. I refused to look like a crazy person screaming and begging for one last chance for something that would not happen. I had always heard you shouldn't make any big changes the first year after a crisis. I knew my brain was rewired. I knew I was fragile. I was going through a mental checklist of things I should do to avoid the crazy train. I saw a psychologist and I dutifully took our daughter to one too. I maintained a regular schedule. I did everything I was supposed to do. Our daughter Gwen turned 9 the month after Greg died. I had a small party for her despite the grief we both felt. I celebrated holidays through tears. It wasn't the first time we were alone for Thanksgiving or Christmas. It was just the first time that Greg wouldn't come home for one. It was the beginning of how we would always be from here on out. Then, right before Christmas, just a few months after Greg died, 4 unrelated life-changing events hit me like a pile of bricks. My car joined him and left this mortal world. 2 of my friends died within days of each other, and I was notified that the Department of Defense would not be further funding my position. So much for not making any major changes. I heard Greg's voice in the back of my head. Get up. Move. Where to? What now? I had to do something. I bought the same car I had before. I thought that was smart. Don't make any major changes. I didn't want to learn a car's new buttons or features. I bought it in the color I wanted though. Greg had picked the last one and I hated it. It was black with a black leather interior. I told him at the time he was crazy and I would burst into flames in the North Carolina heat with that kind of car. I bought a red car with a tan leather interior. I felt very dangerous. I began talking with Mason, the widower of my good friend who had died right before Christmas. Bobby and I had become friends in Vicenza, Italy, when our families were stationed there in 2002. For years, our lives were intertwined by war for the men and daily hum and drum of everyday life for those back home. Bobby hosted Gwen's baby shower. Our families met for dinner when they visited. We all supported each other as our careers and lives moved forward with each passing milestone. Her husband, Mason, was someone that Greg loved and admired for his broad wisdom, humor, and integrity. Right before Gwen was born, Greg asked Mason to be her godfather. Now, we were both in the same boat, widowed, young, each with a child, and treading water in a world alone. Our friends were slowly backing away from us, not knowing what to say. For example, a friend said good morning to me in passing, then immediately followed it with more apologies as if we had gotten into a car accident, which was then followed by telling me I'd never have a good morning again. That shocked me. I did want to have a good morning. I did want to have good days. It was in my inherent nature to search them out, even on the days when I woke up doing the awful things I didn't want to do. I just tried to muddle through my days, but I certainly never tried to make them worse. I was just waiting for them to get better. Mason and I would have long talks about what to do next. We helped each other through the endless paperwork of death, finalizing estates, spell-checking headstones, and figuring out how to help the kids through their grief. We became best friends in the absence of our old friends. Without a job, I decided to go back to school. I had always chosen safe schools, ones that were easy to navigate. This time I chose the Harvard Extension School. I thought it was a long shot, but I got accepted. Mason encouraged me, cheered me on. When it was time to make another decision, this time about homeschooling Gwen, he helped me do research. Gwen had wanted to be homeschooled for years. I had long told her she was safer in the public school system because I was not smarter than a fifth grader. I couldn't use that excuse anymore. With careful planning, I began homeschooling for the next year. By the summer of 2013, Mason and I had been exhausted by grief, the process of death, and the dumb things people say with good intentions. On a whim, he said we should take the kids to Mexico for vacation, half joking. I agreed. What did we have to lose? We'd already lost so much. We left in July. That vacation was the beginning of so many more. We went to the Bahamas, the beach in South Carolina, New York City, and eventually Mason asked to be stationed in North Carolina. When he asked me to marry him, I thought he was crazy. Why would we want to go through the pain of losing another spouse all over again? It didn't take me a full 5 minutes to realize that it didn't matter if we were married or not. It was another brave step in the face of fear. I never expected him. He was wise, kind, and funny, and it did not hurt that he was tall and handsome. We trusted each other. We knew what the dark part of the soul looked like when you tried to hide it from the rest of the world. He too held his wife in his arms after she died. He knew my secrets, he knew my pain, and I knew his. More than that, our kids were bonding with us, with each other. We were all becoming closer through these tragedies. Our children shared the bond of losing a parent. I remember how Bobby loved her son Eli. I wanted to care for him, and she'd want me to, as she would have, as a mother. If I were gone, I'd want someone to love Gwen and mother her, nurture her, guide her through life. I'd want someone to love Gwen, and I already said that. Let's go on to the next sentence. Mason stepped in and loved Gwen as Greg would have wanted. This is where it all goes south. At some point in a reading it does. Mason stepped in and loved Gwen as Greg would have wanted her to be loved. Now I'm reading like a second grader. The day she was born, Greg cried. He held her and he said, "Daddy's got you." Mason knew that story. He knew that love for his own children, and he extended his heart to include Gwen. We knew the love that was lost, the cost of that on the soul, and we felt an immeasurable amount of love that words can't qualify to comfort those aches. We were becoming a family. Color was beginning to fill our black and white worlds. In 2015, after we married, we chose a new home in a small, quiet, postcard-perfect town. Mason was set to retire from the Army in a few years. We began planning what that would look like. We mapped out new goals. What would make us happy? What would be truly fulfilling? It took years of struggle, mud, and mess that people don't always see because we keep those things private. Each struggle, each time we got knocked back down, we got up. We had to. We had to be the heroes for our children. Not on pages told in stories that weren't real, but we had to show them how to survive, how to rebuild our own Sparta. Death is for the living to survive, to thrive after. You take it, the grief, the heartbreak, and you mold it into a legacy to honor those who are gone. It's an opportunity that should never be wasted. That's how I got here. I got up, and I built something better.
I'd like to go ahead and invite Liz Nance up to read her essay, Our Secrets Keep Us Sick. Liz Nance is from a time and place in Georgia where women did what they were told and held back tears to hold families together. It didn't take her long to realize that just wasn't her. Leaving behind the idea that you can't talk about the skeletons in the closet, she started writing to expose them in the form of song. Liz resides in Bryson City, North Carolina, with her husband and their cat, Bookie.
All right. My essay is entitled, Our Secrets Keep Us Sick. Why do we wait to tell our stories? As I've watched and listened to women in the media coming forward about sexual misconduct, the most common questions I've heard asked are why now and why did she wait so long? Most women we see just coming forward aren't new to telling the story. More often than not, we've told our stories already. We told them to someone who was supposed to be trustworthy and safe. When you're shut down by people you assume will stand up for you, why would you want to tell anyone else? So we lock it up. We convince ourselves that it won't come up again, that it didn't really matter, or that it never really happened. We forget how to be girls, how to be young ladies, and then we don't know how to be women. We forget how to feel human. Then life gets hard, sometimes unexpectedly, and we hit rock bottom. Our secrets keep us sick. I can see that sentence in her handwriting when I close my eyes. She wrote it just 2 weeks before she took her own life. In that same journal, a loose piece of paper tucked in the pages reads, "What had happened was, I can't ward off the memories anymore. My mind won't sleep. Dreams won't quit telling me what is next." Like my mama, I was raised by a tribe of strong Southern women. We grew up thinking that this is what family was made of and what it was built on. As a child, it seemed to mean something, like bravery, courage, open hearts, open houses. Yet, as an adult, I would find out that earning the title of strong Southern women meant learning how to suppress your feelings and learning how to keep quiet about things that might bring shame and ruin the reputation of the family. We weren't a brood of tough freedom fighters at all. Instead, we were generations of women doing our damnedest to keep up appearances. Around 1 a.m. on November 1st, 2010, the world lost a strong Southern woman when my mama shot herself in the heart while sitting in her favorite spot on her back porch. In the days and months that followed, a story began to unfold. A story of a woman who had a lot of secrets. A story of a woman who never had a chance to tell her story. A story of a woman who had hit rock bottom without realizing she could get back up. When a man takes advantage of his position as the head of the household, it is devastating to the entire family. A husband, a father, a patriarch is supposed to give love and support to his household. Fathers of young girls should nurture the fragile nature of being female and provide an example of what she should someday seek in a mate. How can a young woman feel strong or empowered if she was raised to feel used and complacent? When I was in 5th grade, I confided in my mama that a grown man had stuck his tongue in my mouth. Her response was, "Well, he does that to his kids." Telling this story to my sister later in life, I learned that the same man had been inappropriate with her, and she had also told our mother. Our mother's response to my sister: "One day you'll meet a man who loves you, and that will be okay." We had both been given a very unhealthy response by someone we loved and trusted. Now I have to say, for those who have never met my mama, she was loving, caring, funny, an amazing wife and mother. Everyone who met her loved her, and she loved them back. But remember, she had known that our secrets keep us sick. And in some instances, those secrets keep us from being able to react properly to things going on around us. In my case, and in my sister's case, we had told someone. We told the person that we thought would tell us what had happened. We told the person that we thought would tell us why it happened. We told the person we thought would tell us that it wasn't our fault. However, in that moment, in that small downstairs half bathroom of that townhouse, during the early hours of our big football party, I tattled on a grown man who was supposed to be a friend of the family, and I didn't get the response I should have from my mama. If in that moment my mama would have admitted that what had just happened to me was wrong, she would have also in that moment had to deal with the fact that it had happened to her too. When my mama passed away, lots of things were unearthed. I felt like I was part of an archaeological dig that was exposing the shittiness of humanity. It opened my eyes to picture-perfect families and the realities of the harm that keeping up appearances can cause. My mama was a writer. She journaled every day. She took notes. She documented everything. Most families who lose someone to suicide are left with so many unanswered questions. Reading Mama's notebooks and journals opened my eyes to the wild injustices within our family and to a woman who was living in silent terror. She would leave small cries for help in the margins. She wrote the words, "quiet strength, inner turmoil," in such beautiful handwriting that you would think that it contained a lovely message of hope. Most of her journals were about herself, her daily struggles, about Dad and his work, and how much she loved her kids. A lot of little stories of sweet memories. After she died, Dad realized that he couldn't stay in the house without her. I drove down from North Carolina to Georgia to help go through things and pack up. As Dad took apart the dresser in her bedroom, he found another journal, one we hadn't seen. The words inside its covers felt like a hot bullet going straight through my heart. My eyes were opened to a woman who had been molested since the age of 4. A woman who was in a sexual relationship with her stepfather even into adulthood. The part that hurt the most was reading the words, "How could they ever forgive me? How could I ever look him in the eyes again? How will my children trust me again?" She was struggling to keep the secret inside, but struggling even more to figure out how to let it out after she had kept it for so long. The day after that notebook was found, my sister and I sat down with family to tell them about the horrible things that we had learned. Surely we strong Southern women can work through this together, but that wasn't the response we got. Instead, we found out that other people already knew. We were told, well, in another time and place, they would have made a great couple. It turns out strong Southern women had been working hard to keep this one under wraps, and this started a fight as I attempted to rip off the blinders. Currently, there are people in my hometown, both friends and family, wondering why I waited so long to share this story. The truth is, I didn't wait. I just tried to share it with the wrong people. I shared it with people that I thought would tell me what happened. I shared it with people that I thought would tell me why it happened. I shared it with people that I thought would tell me that it wasn't her fault. I expected healthy, helpful reactions. I didn't expect the fear, the blame, or being told to keep quiet. Now I share this story with the people who are closest to me. I share it with the people who need to hear it. I share it with people who won't make me feel guilty, like the guilty party, and I share it with people who encourage me to keep going. Why do so many people in my family not know the truth? It's not because I didn't want to tell them. I just didn't know where to start. You see, those strong Southern women wanted to deal with it their way. Why aren't other people in my family telling this story, or at least trying to? And why did I slow down in my own telling of it? Why didn't I just put it all out there? I feel like I tried, but I shut down due to the reactions of the ones I told. I was confronting them about something that most of them didn't know, something that some of them had suspected, and something that a handful of them already knew. And that may have hurt the most. Finding out that someone that my mama loved knew what was happening and never did anything to help her. They say separating yourself from toxic, negative relationships is good for your mental well-being. That's a lot easier said than done when those relationships are with kin. I guess I assumed that once the secrets were out, the rest would be easy. I guess I didn't realize how hard my family was working to keep that closet door closed. You know, the one with the skeletons. But the rug that everything was swept under isn't touching the floor anymore.
I'd like to invite Miss Awet Teame to the stage to read her essay, Inni. Awet is an Eritrean American comedian, actress, voiceover artist, writer, and radio host, and she's most recently appeared on the new incarnation of Dexter on Showtime. She graduated from Emerson College, and she performs stand-up comedy all the way from Los Angeles to Boston, as well as at universities for the past 15 years. Miss Awet.
Oh, no, it's okay. Okay. I'm glad you guys are up here, though.
We got you.
Thank you. I need some water.
It's ready.
Thank you.
Just in case.
Just in case.
Just in case.
Brace yourselves, everyone. Brace yourselves. Oh, okay. Spiritually, I believe we choose our parents. And I can see why I chose my mother. I prefer her over any other Eritrean mother, but no one's perfect. I do wish she wasn't as traditional as she is. She's basically a slave to cultural rituals. My mother agreed to have me circumcised 40 days after I was born. Okay. Eritreans do everything after 40 days, such as celebrating a person's death 40 days after they die, and fasting for Easter 40 days before. Is that right? While the country ended. Okay, hold on. Yeah. Yes, that really helps. I actually like cozy, so this is nice. Thank you. Okay, so while the country ended female circumcision over 20 years ago, I'm pissed it ever existed. When I asked my mother why she allowed it to happen, she just shrugged and said, "It's the culture." When I was older, we had a deeper discussion, and she explained they did it to keep women from being too sexual. I asked, but didn't it happen to you? And didn't you figure out that that wasn't true? She shrugged again, but this time she didn't know what to say. She sensed my resentment, which I still haven't released. I think it's even worse that she did it to mark me as pure or proper Eritrean girl. I'm even angrier that no one was there to advocate for me, to stop her, to stop the midwife from cutting me. They didn't stitch you up after. My mother told me that the wound supposedly heals itself on its own when you urinate, which sounds ridiculously painful. As a kid, I knew something down there wasn't right. At times my skin felt tight and sensation felt dulled, as if there could have been more. But I'm sure whoever started the practice would hate to learn that we women who have undergone female genital mutilation, FMG, still orgasm and have sex recreationally. Although this was something that happened to me, I still feel ashamed and embarrassed by it as a grown woman. I feel insecure, as if I'm less desirable than other women. Maybe that was their goal too. This is one of the many reasons I view my culture negatively. Its traditions have not only violated my right to choose what happens to my body, but I also find it to be judgmental, competitive, disrespectful, and intrusive. People in the community often act as if they're entitled to an opinion of you, who you're in a relationship with, where you go, what you do, and especially how much money you have. They arrange marriages and frenemies. Oftentimes, the men are possessive and women are controlling and competitive. So I learned to push back. Being raised by an immigrant mother is confusing. I'm a grown woman, yet she yells at me like I'm 12, constantly insulting me. But then does my laundry and cooks all of my meals. Even at age 12, I wondered why I was being yelled at all the time and physically beaten. Well, that ended the day she charged at me with a high-heeled shoe. Instinct made me kick her in the stomach. I had a feeling that would have caused brain damage. Then I told her to stop hitting me. That was the first time I had ever stood up for myself. She never hit me again. But the emotional and mental abuse continued. Physical wounds heal, but verbal, mental, and emotional leave long-lasting scars. Scars that can shape beliefs of how you look and what you deserve. All false and untrue. I'm still a work in progress, but these experiences have taught me a thing or two about protecting myself and creating boundaries. Even though bringing me to America was her last resort to escape a failed marriage, my mother's bold decision turned out to be the greatest blessing in disguise. Here I can rebuild. I'm an Emerson College graduate. I've been living the dream as a stand-up comic. Still haven't made any money. But love it nonetheless. Striving to work as a voiceover artist, writer, actor, recent cybersecurity apprentice, and more. I have the freedom to be who I want to be in this country. I don't take for granted that I can be myself here and feel respected. Forgiveness is the last step in healing from the pain I experienced as a survivor of FGM, but forgiveness takes time. I've only told about 3 people outside of the men I've slept with, but they don't count, as most of them weren't even paying attention. When men have noticed, I just tell them I have an innie. And they buy it. So, coming out about my innie is a huge deal for me. But it is time that, but it's time to take my power back from all of these people who've tried to take it away from me since the day they cut me. Sorry. Yes, something very precious. Yes, something very precious was taken from me. But the rest of me has somehow compensated. Somehow became empowered despite my scars. Thank you.
Did it. I mean, you made me cry in public. Oh, right? That's cool. Yeah, this is all about me, Kerry. All right, I would like to invite up Miss Dawn Brockett to read her essay, Enough. Dawn lives in Idaho with their wife and their dog, Coco. After completing 6 academic degrees and certificates, she mustered the courage to write something that was not assigned. Dawn recently completed the manuscript of her first book, a memoir, that will be coming out on Heritage and Strumpet Publishing Press soon. Mountains of exceptional height, coffee of profound depth, and conversations of extraordinary length reliably lure her from her writing chair. And you can visit dawnbrockett.com to find out more. Ms. Dawn.
Let's get this out of the way. Anorexia. Let's start over without a
It
sliding
rolls.
podium. It rolls. Do not lean on the podium. Let's get this out of the way. Anorexia is not about control. Anorexia is like trying to bake a tall, round, crusty, pocketed loaf of bread when you have been given frigidity and salt to feed the yeast instead of sweetness and warmth. The anorectic working with the wrong ingredients before she is savvy enough to know the difference, arrives at the table with a hard, dense, inedible brick, and then is beaten to a psychological pulp for this failure by the very voices and thoughts that tricked her into believing that she had enough, all that she needed, and plenty to share. Anorexia is about shrinking to accommodate the space that you've been allowed to take up in your life, the exact amount of space that you can hold without making anyone else uncomfortable. Healing from anorexia is an act of insubordination, of self-defense. You must fill the space that you have been denied, the space that someone else thinks belongs to him. Be assured he will fight back, accustomed as he is to taking up all the space that he desires, unquestioned, unchallenged. The widely accepted social narrative holds that anorectics are perfectionists, risk-averse, and controlling, and on the first two, I surrender. Yes, layers and complexity are collapsed into convenient labeling, but all sides of the argument end in nearly the same location, and subtleties not worth dissecting here. However, with the control claim, I take singular and serious issue. It is a label not merely of convenience, but of false identity, a tool to minimize, a corrupting blame misplaced. The anorectic as control freak accusation is a straw man argument, false, evasive of the real problem, and easy to destroy. So if a person's goal is to simply destroy her, to define the identity of the shrinking person, to shape her agency in the way that will best reflect onto him, to excise her hope of finding the will to take up a column of self-sustaining space in the world, he should carry on with this self-serving attack, label her controlling, walk away, feel superior. She will shrink further, and he can puff himself up into the space that she surrenders, feeling deserving of his bloated sense of self-worth, further buoyed by the twisted kindness of the illness. Her guilt for having inconvenienced him by simply existing will drive her to exist less, ever smaller. It is not true that I was happy to learn that my father is a narcissistic sociopath. It is just that the relief of the diagnosis coming from a licensed, tenured, respected psychologist was so profound that it was nearly indistinguishable from a certain kind of happiness. Knowing this one thing, sans doute, clarified so many disparate parts of my life. It was the puzzle piece I was missing, without which my experiences felt random and cruel and deeply disconcerting. I love my dad, almost as much as I can't stand him. Ours is not a standard issue father-daughter story of angel and demon behavior, of wit and charm, frustration and rebellion, followed predictably by reconciliation. Truth is, I don't really know what a standard issue father-daughter story is. I've seen some from a distance. They look a lot like Disney to me. Delightful, but terribly unrealistic under the laws of my natural world, where there is no daddy-daughter dance. There is only destruction. Ours is an oil field of flame, a wealth of possibility turned toxic, irrelevant, and permanently mind-altering. This is not a love story, at least I don't think it is. I am too young to pretend to know how large a narrative love can hold. Unlimited, you may say. Love underscores the plots of epic sagas. It holds the extremities of human existence. It soothes the unnamed condition. It heals all things. But you don't know my father. In the words of Euripides, the great Greek playwright, to a father growing old, nothing is dearer than a daughter. Aristotle considered him to be the most tragic of the playwrights, likely because his works shifted the focus from gods to man, driving the tragedy deeper into the core of daily living. He was among the first to allow for intelligence in slave characters and death in female characters. My father could learn something from this man who lived 2,500 years ago. My father, who is now growing old without the dear benefit of his daughter. My father, who laughed at and dismissed boundaries. My father, who took up every square inch of space in the room, in my world, in my mind. He believed that it was his to take. My dad gave me the outdoors and a love of nature. He trained my eyes to catch every small deviation, to move through the world as resilient prey. A dangerous assignment, ever more so given that my hunter lived within. In defensive mode, I am quick to spot an animal from only a flutter or a subtle shade difference deep in the neutral woods. I notice the texture of the snow and how long it has lain undisturbed on the ground since a living creature tread upon it. I'm comfortable in a wide range of temperatures and conditions. I need little preparation, adapting like the alter ego of a key-disturbed princess. I move silently. I prefer low light or darkness, and my trust is earned with great difficulty. Despite feeling hunted throughout most of my life, I prefer solitude. I'm not a pack animal. I do not embrace the protective comforts of community. Deep, quiet, enduring aloneness rejuvenates and strengthens me, prepares me to outrun the monster, to outwit the master, to say no to the tyrant. This I have learned. To defeat the demon, you must hold your ground and appear large. You must fully inhabit your space. You must stop depriving yourself to feed him. He will try to make you look crazier than you already feel. Someone is going to get hurt. Someone has taken squatter's rights on your sanity. The moment that you know for certain that the space is yours and that you are willing to defend it, you can know that you are going to win. No doubt you will lose many battles in this war, but in the end, you will win by inhabiting the place in this world that rightfully belongs to you. The potential that fills you seeps out through your generosity. It is yours to direct, to fulfill, and at times when you must, to abandon. This living is an act of creativity, not of control. Refuse him the right to write his failed life story on your bones. Your story is your own to craft in your beautiful handwriting, your open prose. Anorexia wrote several chapters of my life story. My closest consort for many years, the most lethal of the scientifically classified mental illnesses, I know her intimately. In moments of overwhelm, I still wish to disappear, to fade into stardust. Nagging physical pain or emotional discomfort distract and fatigue my awareness. Fortifying routines become compromised. My guard lowers and the punch lands. Dizzy, and with thoughts like stars circling my field of reality, I begin to believe the voice finding fault with my simple contentment. In harsh tones, the internal voice of anorexia tells me that I would feel fundamentally different if I weighed remarkably less, if I denied myself one thing or another, if I cinched my discipline corset an inch, preferably more. The voice holds incredible power. It drove me to a cacophony of outrageous decisions that ultimately resulted in my physical body weighing nearly half of the lowest recommended healthy weight for my height. The voice sneers that peace lies in dimming the lights of the world to black, evaporating obligations and responsibilities and ties that bind, tucked in for a very long cold nap it offers. Eyes lower, then clenched, breathing all that ceases, a sort of compensatory hibernating paralysis holds me in its clutches until something breaks the spell. Anorexia nervosa isolates and kills like the true predator that it is, yet contrary to typical predatory behavior, it seeks the strongest, the brightest, the kindest, and the most capable. Anorexia craves the best. First, it must weaken its prey with the most powerful weapon of all, thoughts. Anorexia usurps the logical processes of the mind, generating a Mobius loop of self-loathing. Starvation is merely a method, one that can further warp the mind with its endless counting, denial, craving, restriction, allowances, guilt, confessions, and penitence. It is a complex death march of religious proportion. So what breaks the spell? Space and healthy connections. You'll recognize these by their easy respect for your boundaries. Breaking commitments that hold you to unrealistic terms. Taking extraordinary risk. Cultivating a feeling of being enough. Sensory saturation, touch, hot coffee, physical activity, gentle and benign words that cannot be easily twisted or strained. Love with loads of space. The world turns upside down, then right side up again. The sun bursts through the clouds, revealing a way forward. A scene of possibility emerges into view. Something substantive, strong, and solid stitches and patches the battle wounds. It feels like self-respect, and it provides more strength and sustenance than any father or any other person to whom society recommends I sublet my unique human value ever could. I stand now with less fear, having scrambled up this treacherous mountain to defeat the predator that feels too often inseparable from myself, the distinction at times impossible to make. I wonder, what other powerful solidity lies within reach from this place? I gave up the bitter illusion of perfection. To release this false hope is to slay the dragon. Healing is a human feat, fueled by self-reflection. Name and remind yourself of your boundaries in order to claim and reinforce them. You may, as I do, forget and surrender them 100 times. Reclaim them for the 101st time. Do it again and again. To shift out of prey vulnerability, know your strengths and your enemy's kill points. They are one and the same. As you grow in strength and stature, as you hold the boundaries of yourself, you force him out of your space. You must leverage everything that you have within you. You have more than you realize, all that you need, enough, and you are worth the effort.
All right, we have our final writer up, Miss Kate Canute. Kate is a semi-retired rock star, shameless geek, and lover of broken and geriatric dogs. In 2013, a 4-month hospitalization with meningitis and encephalitis led to her diagnosis with ICL, a super rare immune deficiency. Although she returned to music after relearning how to walk and speak in full sentences, the struggle to keep her immune system at a passable level has pushed performing onto the back burner. But she is here to read for us.
I'm way shorter than everybody else. Oh my goodness. Except for me. The messiness of perseverance. The year 2012 was a banner year for me in almost every way it could have been. My artsy electro-rock hybrid band, my Raisin D'etre, for as long as I could remember, released a full-length album in March. A somewhat neurotic perfectionist, I had worked for the better part of a decade creating and fine-tuning the sound and lyrics, and had the good fortune to work with a record producer who is not only well-connected, but one whose work I greatly admired as well. On the night of the release party, our favorite local venue was a packed house. Fans, friends, and colleagues mingled with curious neophytes who were drawn to the performance by radio ads and word of mouth. At the end of the evening, wrapped in bliss and the best kind of exhaustion, I drifted off, knowing that I was on the precipice of something I had worked nearly my whole life to achieve. The rest of the year was a whirlwind. Rehearsals bled into lengthy drives to new venues in new towns, and subsequent performances to crowds of varying size and enthusiasm levels. A theater in Jacksonville with a large stage and an apparently non-existent marketing team produced few new fans, but some high-pro photos. While a small-town dive bar, the audio engineer called my keyboard stand a contraption in exactly the kind of Deep South accent you would expect, was an entertaining night with a raucous crowd. Sleep It Off Sunday became a weekly event, a day to recharge my batteries in front of the television and rest up for the coming week. I had always been an energetic person. Some of my more blunt friends and acquaintances might have said I was tightly wound. Definitely would have. And for once, this was more of an asset than an annoyance. There was plenty to do. Then, in late 2012, something began to go wrong. The first signs of trouble came with a strange pinching feeling deep in my right hip during hot yoga classes. My teacher had a drill sergeant demeanor and was an excessively tan and wiry old curmudgeon who encouraged us to push through any uncomfortable sensations. This fed into my competitive nature in the worst possible way, and I ignored the pain and kept going. By the time Christmas arrived, the pain was no longer intermittent. It was a mind-numbing electrical zap that snaked down my right leg anytime I put weight on it. It got so bad that I had to walk with a cane all of the time. Fortunately, I had some theater buff friends who lent me some very stylish canes to use during performances. I scheduled an appointment with a doctor recommended by a friend, who scheduled a series of corticosteroid injections that he insisted would improve my situation. By April of 2013, I had been given 3 corticosteroid injections, and the pain in my hip, which turned out to be called sacroiliac joint dysfunction, was greatly reduced. But in its place, a new concern arose. I began to suffer from an incredibly painful headache, one that was impervious to any pain medicine I took and got worse every day. I had experienced migraines throughout my childhood and early adulthood, but this headache was a wholly different animal. It began with a pressure at the base of my skull and spread to my entire head over the course of the month. My eyes became blurry and I was constantly nauseated. I kept telling myself it would get better, but it only seemed to get worse. The escalating pain and a weight loss of 15 pounds due to vomiting forced my husband's hand. Against my wishes, he insisted that I go to the emergency room. I didn't realize it at the time, but I would not be leaving that hospital for 119 days. I had somehow contracted a very rare form of fungal meningitis that only affects the immunocompromised. When they found that my CD4 count, often referred to as a T cell count when discussing immune deficiency, was critically low, they tested me for HIV, the virus that causes AIDS. When the first test came back negative, they shook their heads and retested. 5 HIV tests, 5 negative results. Doctors were baffled and I continued to get sicker. A neurosurgeon placed a shunt to pull excess cerebrospinal fluid from my skull to ease the mounting pressure on my brain. A PICC line, a sort of semi-permanent IV, was placed in each of my arms, and I was started on a harsh antifungal medication called amphotericin B. I forgot how to walk. When I spoke, my words came out in senseless jumbles of word salad. And I lived in a hallucinatory haze as my body and brain deteriorated. And then something happened that saved my life. My main infectious disease doctor went on vacation. The doctor who took her place that weekend immediately recognized 2 important facts. First, I was having regular absence seizures caused by encephalitis, which was separate from the meningitis I had been fighting up until then, and required an addition to my medication regimen. Second, he recognized the signs of an extremely rare immune deficiency called idiopathic CD4 lymphocytopenia, ICL for short. Somehow, this doctor, who had years earlier been part of the first cohort of doctors to study this disorder at the National Institute of Health, had ended up working at the very southern Florida hospital where I was dying of something my assigned doctors couldn't name. If I had been a religious sort, I might have called it a miracle. This new doctor was positive that an old medication used to boost the immune system of patients suffering from HIV/AIDS was my best hope to come out of this alive. When my insurance balked at the cost and complained about off-label usage, and the hospital lamented the difficulty of finding and ordering this out-of-fashion treatment, the doctor didn't give in. He went around his supervisors and ordered the $24,000 per week medication anyway. When the medicine arrived, he began the treatment, a series of injections that occurred every other day and made me even more nauseous than I already was. After a couple of weeks, my immune system finally began to rebound, and the antifungal and antiviral medications I had been taking for over a month finally began to do their work. I left the hospital in August of 2013 with an order to return daily for continued infusions of amphotericin B, or amphoterrible as it is caused by those of us who are unfortunate enough to have experienced it firsthand. I weighed a grand total of 87 pounds. All of the muscle I had built up over the years of exercise and careful eating had wasted away, leaving me confined to a wheelchair. I had lost the vision in my right eye when the pressure my swelling brain placed on my optic nerve was too much to bear, and my brain sounded and felt like constant AM radio static, as if someone was indiscriminately changing the frequency with the volume turned up to 11. In the movies, recovering from a serious illness or injury is almost always treated in the same fashion. A montage of relentlessly upward progress set to an inspirational power ballad, ending in the main character's assured triumph. The hero is broken but unbending. In over 3 minutes, they regain all of their old physical and mental abilities through grit, tenacity, and the support of their dedicated friends. The only perceptible change to our protagonist is a new lease on life, whatever that means, and a saccharine positivity that now radiates from their undamaged body. This vision of recovery is, at the very least, putting Vaseline on the lens. At the worst, it is utter bullshit. Recovery sucks. Recovery is not linear. It is not predictable. I made slow progress over many months, relearning how to walk, slowly reacclimating to eating normal food, talking to people that I knew would laugh if I said shit when I meant shirt. Recovery is a balancing act that requires both effort and rest. I was well versed in the former, but I had deficient experience with the latter. I had to learn to listen to my body and respect its limits by only doing what I could handle without pushing for more. Recovery does not have an end date, which is simultaneously frustrating and encouraging. Although I did not know how long it would take for me to find my new sense of normal, I came to realize that as long as I still drew breath, I could work toward improvement. Even now, 5 years later, I still constantly ask myself what I can do to improve my health and well-being. I have not once concluded that I am done getting better, that there are no goals left that I am capable of attaining. About a year after I was rushed to the emergency room, in March of 2014, my band returned to the stage for the first time after my hospitalization. I, of course, was scared senseless. What if I forgot the lyrics? What if I fell or passed out? What if I looked awkward out there? What if I just wasn't as good as I was before? The performance began with me, alone on the stage, with the curtains closed, singing Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here. After the first few lines, the curtains opened, and I had to catch my breath. A sea of friends and fans spread out before me, each holding up a small lighted candle in a coordinated show of solidarity and support. My anxiety evaporated, and it was an unforgettable night. We continued performing regularly until my CD4 count began to creep downward at the beginning of 2015. At that point, I made the difficult decision to take an indefinite hiatus from live performance. I am not sure that I will ever return to the stage on a regular basis, but music is still a massive part of my life. I maintain a home recording studio, and I have taught some voice and piano lessons at a school at Brockett that was opened by a musician whose band shared the stage with mine quite often. My career in music is very different than the one I envisioned for myself, but in the unpredictable mess that is life, adaptability is the name of the game. Resilience comes in many forms, and just like life, it can be downright messy. My illness has changed me profoundly, both in positive and negative ways. I will never be exactly the same person that I was before April of 2013. Unlike some people who write about their tangles with ill health, I don't want to sugarcoat the difficulty that is inherent in living with a severe chronic illness. Being sick is hard work. It's not always pretty and it's not always easy. Some days I feel almost the same as I did before, like I can take on the world with one hand tied behind my back. Some days I decide that the most that I can handle is deciding on what Netflix series to binge watch and what food delivery service to use. Most days are somewhere in between. It is life's messiness and unpredictability that gives us the opportunity to persevere, to find the hidden reserve of badass that we didn't know we had, and to release it into the wild as we hang on for dear life. I don't always have total confidence in myself, and I struggle with the changes I've endured, just like anyone who has dealt with a catastrophic illness or a life-altering event. But there is one truth that remains. I am still here, and I choose to move forward.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Miss Bethany, Dawn, Awet, Liz. This book would not be possible without our writers. You guys helped build this. This is your book just as much as it is anybody's book. And thank you all so much for coming out, for listening to our stories, and for hopefully sharing your own, feeling empowered to do so after listening to these amazing women. So honored to have been your editor for this book, and I'm not gonna cry, but I love each of you, and thank you so much for coming out and listening to us.
Thank you everyone so much for coming. We do have books for sale. If you need to get a book signed, I think the author will stay for a few minutes to sign the books.
Yeah.
If so interested, so please help yourself to grab a book and walk down the line. Thanks for everyone.
Oh.